Barry, thanks for joining us on Bomber TV.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
We've come down to the Shrine of Remembrance today and you addressed the boys and you gave them an insight into a battle that not a lot of Australians are aware of, the Battle of Pozieres.
Yep, that's correct. The Battle of Pozieres was a battle in the very early stages of World War I. Basically, after we left Gallipoli, our troops were split into 4 divisions. One division went to Fromelles and the other 4 divisions went to Pozières, and they went into the fight in Europe there.
And obviously Essendon has quite a close connection to the battle. They lost a couple of players, didn't they?
Yeah, there was eight VFL players actually killed in the battle, of which 2 actually come from Essendon. The first one being Lewis Blackmore. He was actually killed on the first day of the battle on the 23rd of July. And the other one was Les Rogers, who died on the 4th of August. And Lewis, unfortunately, is one of the men that has no grave.
There's been a lot of loss of life, I guess, over the journey. And what brings it home is the connection to football. What would these players turned soldiers have experienced over in Pozières?
Pozières was an absolute nightmare. It was hell. The artillery that was directed at the men at Pozières is recorded as being the worst artillery barrage faced in history. Out of the 7,000 men that died there, 4,112 were destroyed by the artillery. That's 65%, and that's never happened anywhere else. It would have been a non-stop shrieking of shells landing around you. You'd be buried by dirt. Your mates would dig you out. You get buried again, and it just continued. It just did not stop, and that was the hard part.
You also presented Mason Redman, our youngest player on the list, with a bayonet today. Can you tell us a bit of a story behind where the bayonet came from, and then why you chose Mason?
The bayonet is being presented to the club by the Mayor of Pozières and the citizens of Pozières in France in memory of the men like Lewis Blackmore and Les Rogers that died from the AFL. It actually got recovered off the battlefields there. Every year they plough the fields and we get the harvest of death. Rifles come up, bayonets come up, shells, hand grenades, and this is some of the equipment that's actually come forward. What the Mayor wanted to do was to let the people of Australia know that these men have not been forgotten, even 14,000 kilometres away, and they never will be forgotten because of the sacrifice they made. The reason we actually chose the youngest player in the football club is it goes back to the military. Within the military, most of the glory stuff goes to the higher ranks and everything. So we have a policy of things like cutting the birthday cake for the unit is always done by the youngest man. So it was for that reason, and also because these young men they're going to be the ones that are going to carry on this heritage behind us. They're going to be out there playing for 10, 15 years. So they're the ones that really should be getting involved and should have the feeling of having a personal involvement in what this is all about.
And speaking of continuing the tradition and remembering our soldiers, you're working quite hard to ensure that the men who lost their lives in Pozières are always remembered. Yeah,
that is correct. We've actually managed to procure the land that surrounds the windmill site, and that's land described by Charles Bean as the one place on earth most densely sown Australian sacrifice. And what I'll be doing for the next 6 to 8 months now is trying to raise the money to actually put memorial gardens out over the top of these men. Our intent is to make sure that these men can actually rest in those fields. There's not going to be anything built over them, they're not going to be dug up, and they will be at peace for once, with no chance of anything disturbing them. So that's what we'll be doing for the next 6 months, is trying to actually raise the money.
Well, Barry, thanks very much for giving us an insight into the Battle of Pozières and also talking to our players today.
That'd be no problems. And for those people watching this on Essendon TV, could you please stop for a minute on the 23rd of July and just think about your 2 players and all the rest of the players from the AFL and the men of Australia that actually died in this battle, as the 23rd of July is the centenary. Thank you very much.